Lieutenant Kara Vorn stood at the helm of the Zelkari warship, her cold yellow eyes fixed on the planet Taser below. The planet was a speck of dust in the grand scheme of the galaxy, hostile, unpredictable, and inhabited by humans. Kara's species, the Zelkari, had long been tasked with quelling uprisings from primitive civilizations like the humans. The Zelkari were technologically advanced, their intellects far surpassing that of most species. To them, humanity was little more than a nuisance, a pest that would be easily crushed underfoot. The Zelkari Dominion had already conquered countless worlds, using their superior technology and military prowess to pacify any potential threats. They viewed themselves as the keepers of order in the galaxy, eradicating chaos wherever it arose. Their conquest of humanity seemed like nothing more than another routine task. Kara's mission was clear: scout the human stronghold on Taser, assess their military capabilities, and neutralize the threat. A few days of work, at most. But she had no doubt that it would be a simple victory. Her ship was sleek and silent in the vastness of space. Kara stood at the command center, the low hum of the ship's engines filling the air. The crew, composed of several high-ranking Zelkari officers, moved about the room, preparing for the upcoming operation. They spoke in clipped tones, confident in their success. Kara could already see the outcome in her mind: an easy mission, a brief strike, and then humanity would be erased as a threat once and for all. She had little regard for humans. They were a primitive race, barely above the level of animals. Their technology was rudimentary at best, their understanding of the universe laughable. The Zelkari had studied humanity's history, and what they found only confirmed their belief: the humans were weak and ineffective. The Zelkari had never been wrong in their assessments of other species, and this time would be no different. As the Zelkari warship approached Taser, Kara's thoughts turned to the mission at hand. The human resistance on the planet had been mostly neutralized, but there were still pockets of defiance scattered across the surface. Kara's task was simple: identify the last of these human holdouts and eliminate them. Once the humans were gone, the planet would be safe to harvest for resources, and the Zelkari could move on to their next conquest. However, as her ship neared the planet, something unexpected happened. A transmission came through. It was weak, almost garbled, but unmistakably human. Kara was surprised the humans weren't supposed to have the capability to send messages so far out of their territory. She ordered the transmission to be patched through, curious about what the humans had to say. The voice that came through was unrecognizable, distorted by the poor quality of the transmission. It sounded casual, almost carefree. "We shot a human," the voice said, but he just laughed and kept on coming. The message was simple, but its implications were far from ordinary. Kara stared at the screen, her mind processing the words over and over. She had been expecting desperation, fear, or perhaps a final plea for mercy. Instead, she was met with laughter. A defiant challenge, one that seemed almost absurd given the human's position. The voice wasn't shaking or pleading. It was mocking, filled with an odd sense of humor that Kara couldn't quite comprehend. Her officers exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to respond. Kara's mind raced. This was not the message of a defeated species. It didn't make sense. How could humanity, a race she considered beneath the Zelkari, respond like this? The Zelkari had always believed that any species on the brink of destruction would cower, beg for mercy, or attempt to negotiate for survival. But this was different. Was it a taunt? A boast? Or was there something more to it? Kara couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary challenge. It was a message. A message that spoke of something deeper, something the humans had that the Zelkari had failed to recognize. She dismissed the transmission, but the words lingered in her mind. "He just laughed and kept on coming." It was a phrase that seemed to echo in the empty spaces of her thoughts. It was not fear that the humans spoke of, nor was it surrender. It was something else entirely. Kara's curiosity, typically reserved for strategy and military tactics, now found itself drawn to the human spirit, something she had never considered before. Perhaps there was more to humanity than she had initially thought. Could it be that their will to survive was stronger than she had imagined? That this strange, rebellious spirit might be their greatest weapon? As Kara and her team began to land on Tazar, a sense of unease began to creep into her. This was supposed to be an easy mission, a simple task to remove the last remnants of humanity's resistance. Yet now, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a battle for survival. Something about humanity's defiance made her question everything she had ever believed about the species she was sent to destroy. The Zelkarai were not accustomed to underestimating their enemies, but for the first time, Kara found herself uncertain. What if the humans weren't just another primitive race to conquer? What if they were something more, something that could not be so easily erased? As she prepared for the attack, Kara couldn't help but feel that this mission would not end as she expected. She would soon learn that humanity's true power was something the Zelkari had never anticipated, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Zelkari assault on the human outpost began as expected, effortless, and brutal. Kara Vorn watched from the command center as her forces swept across the barren landscape of Tazar, their advanced weaponry reducing the human defenses to dust. The humans' attempts to fight back were futile. They were simply too weak, too unprepared for the might of the Zelkari Dominion. The first wave of troops had already crushed the outer barricades, and the remaining human soldiers scattered like ants before a crushing foot. It was a victory they had come to expect from every mission in their long, illustrious history of conquests. Kara observed it all, her sharp yellow eyes scanning the battlefield with a detached focus. The humans put up a fight, but it was clear that they stood no chance. She was about to issue the order to proceed with the final phase of the operation, when her officer, Shaler, approached her with an unexpected report. A lone human had been captured. The human soldier, a young man in his mid-20s, was dragged into the Zelkari's temporary holding facility. He had been taken alive, which was rare. Typically, humans fought to the last breath, a futile gesture that usually resulted in death. Yet this soldier had surrendered without resistance. At first, Kara assumed it was a sign of weakness, but what she discovered would challenge everything she thought she knew about the humans. She entered the interrogation room, her mind focused on extracting any information about the remaining human resistance. The soldier was shackled to a chair, his face bruised from the skirmish, but his demeanor remained eerily calm. His eyes clear and unblinking, fixed on her with a quiet intensity. "What's your name?" Kara asked, her voice cold and authoritative. The soldier didn't flinch. "Does it matter?" he replied with a grin, the edges of his lips curling upwards as though amused by the situation. Kara clenched her fists. This was not what she had expected. She was used to fear, pleading, begging. But this soldier was different. The Zelkari's powerful mind-reading technology showed no sign of resistance or thoughts of escape, just that unsettling calm. Her patience thinned. "Tell me everything you know about the human resistance," she demanded, her voice a little sharper. The soldier leaned forward, his face still smiling. "We shot a human, but he just laughed and kept on coming," he said in a low, mocking tone, repeating the transmission from earlier. His eyes twinkled as if enjoying the joke only he understood. Kara's pulse quickened, her frustration mounting. She had been expecting a terrified plea for mercy, perhaps a few begging words about the human's last stand, but not this. This stubborn silence, this refusal to break, left her utterly perplexed. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't even trying to escape. She ordered the interrogation to continue, but no matter what methods they used, the soldier wouldn't yield. He refused to speak of his comrades or give any useful information. Instead, he would just repeat the same phrase, his eyes gleaming with an unyielding resolve. "We shot a human, but he just laughed and kept on coming." Kara's officers were growing frustrated, unable to extract anything more useful from the soldier. In the quiet room, Kara began to reflect. The soldier's unwavering defiance was starting to wear at her. What did it mean? This soldier had no apparent fear. Was it that he had no fear of the Zelkari, or was it that he simply didn't care? Either possibility unsettled her deeply. Was this the norm for humans? Back on the warship, Kara ordered her intelligence officers to dig deeper into the history of humanity. What she uncovered was staggering far more than she had anticipated. Humanity, despite its primitive tools and sparse technology, had a history of remarkable resilience. Time and again, They had faced extinction or annihilation and yet emerged from the ashes, stronger than before. Their survival instincts were unparalleled. Humanity's ability to adapt, to overcome the impossible, was a quality no other species in the galaxy shared. Most civilizations fell when their technology or resources were depleted, but not humans. They simply adapted. Where one door closed, they found another. It was an intelligence that wasn't just about technology. It was about willpower, something that the Zelkarai, for all their superiority, had never truly understood. Kara's mind raced as she considered the implications. Could this innate resilience be the real strength of humanity? The Zelkari had always prided themselves on being the galaxy's most advanced species, their intellect and technology unmatched. Yet, here were the humans seemingly unstoppable. No matter how many times they were pushed to the brink, they refused to be defeated. Kara had never considered the possibility that strength could come from something intangible, something beyond mere firepower and strategy. The soldiers who had been sent to study the human culture were reporting strange developments. Many of them had begun to question their own species' methods. Some were openly fascinated by the human spirit, this unbreakable will that humans seemed to possess. There was a certain admiration that had begun to take root among the Zelkari. Instead of seeing humans as mere pests to be eradicated, some officers were starting to view them as something more, something worthy of study, even perhaps respect. The internal conflict was growing. Kara saw it in the eyes of her soldiers, the way their attention lingered on the human prisoners, as though they were no longer just objects of conquest. This wasn't just a tactical problem anymore, it was philosophical. The Zelkari had conquered worlds through sheer force and intellect, but this human spirit was something that challenged the very foundation of their belief system. Could humanity's resilience be viewed as a form of strength rather than weakness? Kara struggled with this intellectual puzzle. The Zelkari had always believed their technological superiority and ruthless efficiency made them the apex of the galaxy, but perhaps they had missed something crucial. Perhaps this resilience was something that even they could learn from, a quality that transcended mere physical survival. But there was danger in this realization. If the Zelkari were to consider humanity's persistence a strength, they might hesitate. And hesitation could cost them the war, a war that was already set into motion. The question now became, should they eliminate this unpredictable species, or should they learn from them? Could humanity be more than just a threat? They could be a valuable ally or even an asset in future wars. But was their unpredictability too dangerous to control? The more Kara thought about it, the more she began to question her mission. The Zelkari had sent her here to wipe out humanity once and for all. But now, she wasn't so sure. Something about the way the human soldiers endured their suffering, something about their refusal to break, made her wonder if perhaps she had underestimated them. The true nature of humanity was becoming a mystery she couldn't ignore. And in that uncertainty, the seeds of doubt began to take root. Kara Vorn sat alone in her quarters, her mind racing with the knowledge she had uncovered. For weeks, she had been observing humanity, studying their behavior, their culture, their history. What she had believed to be a simple act of survival, an innate trait unique to humanity, now seemed like something far more complex. The truth hit her like a cold wave. The human spirit that had so fascinated and confounded her was not something born of nature. It had been engineered. Her fingers trembled as she reviewed the ancient data fragments she had intercepted. The Zelkari, in all their advanced technology and intelligence, had never considered the possibility that humanity's strength could be the product of manipulation. As Kara sifted through more of the information, a horrifying reality began to take shape. An unknown, ancient species older and more powerful than the Zelkari themselves had deliberately shaped humanity into the ultimate survivors. The humans weren't just resilient by chance. They had been genetically and psychologically crafted to adapt to any environment, to endure the most brutal conditions, and to evolve rapidly in response to threats. In essence, they were the perfect weapon. A species designed not to conquer, but to survive, to persist in the face of destruction. Their remarkable ability to withstand seemingly insurmountable odds was not the result of natural evolution. It was a design. Kara's world began to crumble as she realized the implications of this revelation. Everything she had been taught, everything she believed about the Zelkari being the apex of the galaxy, now felt hollow. The Zelkari had been so certain of their superiority, so confident in their position as the galaxy's most advanced species, that they had never considered that someone else might have engineered a more resilient force, one that could adapt and endure even the harshest conditions. It was a devastating blow to Kara's worldview. She had spent her entire life believing in the Zelkari's invincibility. And yet, here she was, facing the harsh truth. Humanity had been designed to be nearly unstoppable. The Zelkari had been wrong all along. The humans weren't just a threat because they were strong or intelligent. They were a threat because their adaptability was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. No weapon, no technology could guarantee their defeat, because humanity's true weapon was their unyielding will to survive. As Kara sat in the silence of her quarters, she thought back to the soldier she had interrogated, the human who had smiled and mocked her despite the pain. The phrase he had repeated, "We shot a human, but he just laughed and kept on coming," echoed in her mind. It wasn't a boast. It wasn't a joke. It was a declaration of their ultimate purpose, to endure, no matter the cost. This realization led Kara to a new and terrifying question. If humanity had been engineered by an ancient species, then who were they? And why had they created the human race to be so resilient? The implications were staggering. If humanity had been made to survive the harshest conditions, then they had been designed with a purpose, and that purpose was far beyond anything the Zelkari had ever considered. Kara's thoughts turned to the future. If humanity had been created for such a purpose, then it wasn't just the Zelkari they needed to fear. There were greater forces in the galaxy, older and more powerful than any of them, who might have their own designs on humanity. And the Zelkari, in their arrogance, had missed the warning signs. They had underestimated a species that could not be controlled. Kara's mind raced. There were only two paths before her now. She could continue with the Zelkari agenda, wipe out humanity, ensure that the galaxy remained under the control of the Zelkari Dominion. It would be an easy victory, one she had been trained for her entire life. The humans were nothing more than insects to be crushed. But now, after everything she had learned, she wasn't so sure. Could humanity be the key to something greater? Was their adaptability a strength that the galaxy needed, rather than a threat to be eradicated? Her thoughts grew more complicated as she realized the enormity of the decision before her. The Zelkari were a dominant force in the galaxy, their empire vast and unchallenged. But the true enemy, the one that had engineered humanity in the first place, was still out there, waiting. If they returned, they would be an existential threat to everything the Zelkari had built. If humanity could be forged into such a resilient force, then perhaps they could be the key to stopping this ancient enemy. But if Kara was going to act on this newfound understanding, she would need to make a choice, one that would alter the fate of the galaxy forever. As Kara mulled over the decision, she began to see her crew differently. Her loyal officers, who had followed her orders without question, now appeared divided. Some remained steadfast in their commitment to the mission to wipe out humanity and continue Zelkari dominance. But others, particularly a few of her closest officers, had begun to question everything they had been taught. They were beginning to understand the human spirit, how it could adapt, endure, and, most disturbingly, how it could thrive in the face of destruction. This was not just a military conflict anymore. It was an ideological one. The Zelkari were a species founded on the principles of domination and control, while humanity embodied the exact opposite, survival at all costs. Kara felt the weight of the conflict tearing at her. Her mind and heart pulled in two different directions. Should she continue with the Zelkari's mission, the mission she had been trained for and believed in her whole life? Or should she side with the humans, acknowledging that their resilience was something that could be harnessed, not destroyed? Could humanity be the unexpected ally in the coming war? After days of contemplation, Kara finally made her decision, a decision that shocked even her most trusted officers. She would not destroy humanity. Instead, she would forge an alliance with them. She saw now that the human spirit, their ability to adapt and survive, might be the only force capable of stopping the greater, more dangerous enemy that loomed on the horizon. It was a choice that would change everything. Kara was no longer the cold, calculating commander of the Zelkari Dominion. She had become something else, something new, something human. And as she prepared to meet with humanity's leaders, she knew that the fate of the galaxy now rested in the hands of those she had once sought to destroy. But deep down, Kara could not shake the nagging question that still lingered in the back of her mind: who had created humanity and why? She had made her choice, but the answer to that question would determine the true future of the galaxy. Kara Vorn stood at the bridge of the Zelkari flagship, now allied with humanity. The cold steel of the ship's walls and the sterile hum of its machinery were a reminder of how far she had come. Only months ago, she had been a commander for the Zelkari Dominion, tasked with eradicating humanity, convinced of their inferiority. Now, she was fighting alongside the humans she had been sent to destroy. The decision had been made, but it was not without its cost. The alliance with humanity was fragile, and it had caused a rift within the Zelkari ranks. Those who had once followed Kara loyally now saw her as a traitor. She had betrayed the very species she had sworn to serve, and the civil war within the Zelkari fleet had erupted with a brutal intensity. Old friends had become enemies. Soldiers she had trained with had turned their weapons on her, unable to comprehend her sudden shift in allegiance. The battle within the Zelkari fleet was like nothing Kara had ever experienced. Her human allies fought fiercely, driven by the same survival instincts that had fascinated Kara since the beginning. But there was no denying the violence of the situation. Ships exploded in blinding flashes of light, debris and smoke swirling in the vastness of space. Kara's forces fought with everything they had, but she couldn't shake the sense that this conflict, no matter how well fought, would leave scars that could never heal. And yet, as the Zelkari loyalists were pushed back, a new threat appeared on the horizon, a far darker, far more insidious force than anything they had ever faced. The very alien race that had engineered humanity, the creators of the human spirit, had arrived at a T first. Kara thought it was some kind of illusion, some trick of the mind. But as the massive fleet of ships appeared on the scanners, her worst fears were realized. The creatures that had designed humanity were not just an ancient myth, they were real, and they had been watching, waiting for humanity to reach a certain threshold of power. Now, they had returned to reclaim what they had abandoned. The sheer scale of the alien ships was unlike anything Kara had ever seen. Their technology was far beyond even the Zelkaris, and their ships seemed to pulse with an eerie, organic glow. They were not just conquerors, they were architects of life, creators of species, and humanity was their most prized creation. Kara's mind raced as she realized the magnitude of the situation. The Zelkari had always believed themselves to be the galaxy's supreme force, but they were nothing compared to these aliens. Humanity, in all its resilience and adaptability, was now at the center of a galactic storm. Caught between two vastly superior forces, as the alien fleet began its descent toward the battle, Kara knew there was no turning back. The Zelkari loyalists and humanity had no choice but to join forces against this new threat. The fight for survival had evolved into something much larger. It was no longer about defeating the Zelkari or even the alien invaders. It was about ensuring that humanity could survive the wrath of its creators. The battle was brutal. Humanity's ships, though powerful, were outclassed by the alien technology. The Zelkari fleet, battered from their civil war, was barely holding together. Kara had never seen her crew so desperate. But there was something in the human spirit, something in their refusal to back down, that sparked hope even in the darkest moments. With a last, desperate push, Kara's fleet engaged the alien ships in a final assault. The battle raged for hours, with entire fleets disintegrating in bursts of fire and energy. Kara felt the loss. Deeply, each explosion was not just the destruction of a ship, but the loss of another life, another ally. The cost of victory was steep, but it was not without its rewards. Humanity fought with a ferocity that even Kara had not anticipated, and in the end, they were able to land a decisive blow to the alien invaders. The alien ships, heavily damaged and scattered, retreated into the depths of space. However, the victory came at a tremendous cost. The battle had taken its toll on both sides. Kara's ship was a wreck, and her crew had suffered severe casualties. The alliance with humanity had won, but it had come at the price of blood, sacrifice, and heartbreak. Many of Kara's closest officers, those who had once fought alongside her, were now gone. As the smoke cleared and the debris of battle floated in the silence of space, Kara found herself standing in the ruins of the fleet, gazing at the vast expanse of the galaxy. The victory was hollow. The alien threat had been driven back, but the war was far from over. Humanity was no longer just a species on the brink of extinction. They were now a target of an ancient, far more powerful race. The galaxy had become a far more dangerous place, and humanity had only just begun to realize the scope of what it had unleashed. But in the midst of this uncertainty, there was one thing that remained certain: humanity had proven itself. They were not just survivors anymore. They had evolved into something more, something far greater. The very qualities that had once made them a joke in the eyes of the galaxy, resilience, adaptability, and a defiance that knew no bounds, had now become their greatest strength. As Kara stood in the wreckage, her thoughts turned inward. She had chosen to side with humanity, to break with her own people, and risk everything for the chance of a new future. She had led them to victory, but now she faced a new, even more daunting challenge. And then, just as she was about to turn away, a transmission came through, a final message from the alien species that had created humanity. The message was simple, yet it carried a weight that sent chills down Kara's spine. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." The words lingered in her mind as the gravity of the situation settled in. The true battle had only just begun. Humanity had won this fight, but there were far more dangers lurking in the shadows. And as the galaxy watched, Kara couldn't help but wonder, had they really won, or had they merely set in motion a far greater, more dangerous conflict than anyone could have anticipated? Humanity's place in the galaxy was still uncertain. Had they truly become masters of their own fate, or were they merely pawns in a much larger game, one that was only just beginning to unfold?